have a loose structure for your days. Have a routine, not a schedule. It changes all the time depending on the ages of my kids. It helps me to know roughly what our day's gonna look like, and it helps the kids too. Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Michaela and I talk about all things motherhood and how to not just survive being a mom, but how to actually enjoy your life as a mom, and specifically today as a stay-at-home mom. I consider it such a privilege and a gift to be able to be home with my kids, to be the one taking care of them full time. That's not something I want to take for granted, but I know it comes with its own challenges. Not everyone naturally loves being home with their kids and not having the structure that a traditional job would provide. So I'm going to share some of my best tips to actually enjoy being home with your kids all the time and how to kind of infuse your day with little bits of structure. I'll also go over my own loose schedule, or not really schedule, routine for the day and how our days kind of flow right now. But of course it changes all the time depending on the age of my kids, and you know, every time we add another one. I want to remind you that your mindset is your greatest tool, and you get to choose whether or not you want to hold on to thoughts of bitterness and resentment and thoughts like, ugh, my husband gets to go out and work all day, he gets to talk to adults, whatever. You can hold on to those thoughts and let bitterness and resentment fester, or you can choose to focus on the positive side of things and be grateful that you are the one that gets to be with your kids and see all the sweet moments. I always chuckle thinking about what the version of me 4 years ago would think if I saw myself now, because 4 years ago I wasn't really planning on being a mom and having biological kids, and now we have 3 kids, so I'm a 3 under 3 mom. And yeah, I don't even know how that happened. Someone please tell me where babies come from. Anyways, I think the time I spent not believing that I would have kids helped me to appreciate it in a new way, if that makes sense. This wasn't something I always thought I would do, so I have more gratitude for it now that I'm here. And I approached it with very realistic expectations and very relaxed standards on myself. I was pleasantly surprised by every aspect of motherhood. Expectations are a huge part of our mindset, and I think they really shape how we feel about a certain day or week or season of our life. So that's one of the biggest things I've learned when it comes to my mindset around my life and my life as a stay-at-home mom, is to have very relaxed expectations. If I approach the day with too long of a to-do list, too much housework, or too many ridiculous standards for my kids, I know I'm going to be disappointed. So tip number 2 is to have a loose structure for your days. Have a routine, not a schedule. I would consider a schedule something with specific times where you're trying to, you know, be out of bed by 9 and done breakfast by 10 or 9. What world am I living in? Out of bed by 6, done breakfast by 8, or whatever. I would consider that to be more of a schedule. Instead of living my whole life around specific times, we have more of a routine. We do things in the same order, but I don't really pay attention to the clock unless it's for quiet time or bedtime. Those happen at the same time every day. So for us personally, I don't wake up at a specific time. I don't wake up before my kids. I wake up whenever the first one wakes up. And then the first thing of the day is, of course, breakfast. We eat the same thing every day. We have sourdough pancakes and eggs every morning for breakfast. Once breakfast is done, I'll try to do, depending on where the kids are at, a couple things in the kitchen to start to get ready for dinner. I'll chop veggies. I'll just make sure it's clean for the next meal. I will make homemade mayonnaise if that's something I want to do, get some buns rising, whatever it might be. I'll try to do a couple things to get ready for what's ahead. Once the baby is down for his first nap, I'll take the other 2 out on a little walk and make sure we get some fresh air. Or if we're doing an outing that day, that's when it happens, is right after breakfast in the morning. That's my favorite time to be out because there's the biggest chunk of time where the big kids don't need naps. And then when we come back, it's time to eat lunch, and then everyone goes to their beds for quiet time or a nap. And I'm very intentional about taking a little bit of time during that time to rest as well, even if that means just sitting and eating my lunch and reading a book or something like that. I personally don't view being on a screen as restful, so I try to take a few minutes to just read a book or my Bible or something and have a little bit of just a breather. And then my daughter doesn't usually nap. She just has a half hour of quiet time. So then she's up, and that's our special Mummy Rhea time. And we have a little tea party. We'll do some stickers or activities at the table together. Sometimes that's when I'll pull out my laptop to do some work and she'll do her work, her coloring or whatever it is. And then that's our next phase of prepping for dinner. If I have more intense prep to do at that point, like frying meat or something, I'll do it so that I'm not trying to cook at 4 p.m. I don't know about you, but I think that is the absolute worst time to try to cook, is like right before you actually need to eat. So all of my meals I kind of make ahead of time. And then eventually the boys are up and we usually try to get back outside for a bit more fresh air. And then my husband is home, we all eat dinner, and then it's usually just whatever we end up doing until bedtime. Once the kids are in bed, I clean up the kitchen, and then I also try to go to bed early, or at least be resting and reading instead of feeling like I have things to do all the time. So that's our like loose schedule of the day. Like I said, it changes all the time depending on the ages of my kids and the season. Right now, I live in Canada. It's still nice weather here, so we are trying to get outside as much as possible. I know that will change when the weather gets colder, but it helps me to know roughly what our day is going to look like, and it helps the kids too to know that we're not going to go on a walk before breakfast or something like that. And I really think with something like a routine in your day, it can be as structured or as loose as you want it to be. Tip number 3 is plan ahead. This is partly just my personality, but I really like to know what's happening in my day or in my week. So I like to know a few days ahead of time if we're gonna have an outing so that I can plan accordingly. I don't always meal plan the whole week, but I decide in the morning what's for dinner so that throughout the day, if I have little bits of time, I can be prepping it. I find, especially now that we have all 3 kids, I really have to stay on it and ahead of things in order to feel at peace and not stressed out in my role as mom and homemaker. My next tip is to leave space in your schedule, in your day. So I know that for us, because I like to make a lot of foods from scratch, if we are busy every single day, seeing friends or going out or whatever, I feel very stressed out and I feel like I can't keep up with the regular homemaking tasks. I forget laundry exists, I forget to cook dinner, things like that. So I find like 2 to 3 outings in the middle of the week is best for us. And I am an introvert and a homebody, so that's what works for us. Of course, you might have a different preference, but I think it's important to figure out what works for you and then stick with that. My next tip is to, oh my goodness, it just fell out of my brain. My next tip is to minimize the number of decisions you need to make. So for example, we eat the same breakfast every single day. We eat the same lunch every single day. I know people say it's good for you to switch up your foods and whatever, but especially breakfast, when I'm just kind of rolling out of bed and starting my day, it needs to be something that's completely brainless for me. So we eat the same thing every day. We also have a very small amount of dinners, maybe 10 that we rotate through, because those are recipes that are just very quick and natural to me, and it doesn't require a lot of thinking. I know it can seem minor, even things like picking out what your kids wear or something, it seems like a minor decision, but all of those add up, and I find I can feel very stressed out and exhausted if I spend my whole day making a million decisions, which we do anyways as moms, so make it easy on yourself when you can. One of my favorite books is The Lazy Genius Way. She also has a podcast, and one of her principles is to decide once. So as much as possible, if you can make a decision that's going to last for your whole life or this whole season, do that. So that's what I've done, like I said, with breakfast, with the structure of our day, things like that. I just like to minimize the work that my brain is going through every day. Another thing I've decided once is to run the dishwasher every night. People talk about this all the time. I'm sure you're tired of hearing about it, but it truly is life-changing to, instead of always playing the mental game of, is it full enough to run? Is it not full enough? Just run it every night and unload it every morning, and then that decision is made. You don't have to think about it and decide every day. My last tip is, don't be afraid if life looks different than your friends or the people in your community. Like I said, I am an introvert and a homebody. I have a lot of friends who really like getting out of the house and going places. It actually works out well because I'd rather stay home and they'd rather go out, so then they can come to me, and it is great. But of course, I have moments where I think, oh no, am I really boring? Should I take my kids out more places? Or even things like screen time. We actually have not had a TV set up in a long time, and I know a lot of other moms are like, why? Like, there's no harm, show them educational shows, whatever, but I just find it works best for us, and I feel most present as a mom if I don't have a screen on, because it's very distracting and overstimulating for me, not just the kids. So things like that, don't be afraid to act on your own convictions or preferences. Don't be afraid if your life looks different than the people in your life, because we are all doing what we believe is best for our kids and for our families as a whole. So those are my stay-at-home mom tips, at least the ones on my mind right now. I'm sure I will think of more later, but drop your favorite stay-at-home mom tip in the comments, or something that has just really changed the game for you and made it more enjoyable. I would love to hear from you and see how I can implement your suggestions in my life too. So thank you so much for watching. If you liked this video, feel free to send it to a friend who it might bless, and definitely hit subscribe if you want to stick around here. Thank you for watching.